Hey, my name is Brian Curtis, and I'm the founder of Decentralized Systems. And today I've got Trent Clark, who is a three times World Series coach. We're going to have lots of discussion on that today. And Jen Groover, who is a author and global speaker about human growth potential. So welcome to my podcast.
Great to be here.
Okay,
Great to be here, Brian. Thank you.
I have to start with you, Trent. I want to hear what got you into baseball. I'd like to hear what started you into baseball, and then how you got into coaching, for the Indians.
Yeah, so I think always an athlete, always loved it. Younger brother of three other siblings, two older brothers, and really just wanted to be in sports, man. I love the game, and the real growth aspect came for me was because I wasn't growing. Everybody else was, and I wasn't. I thought, oh my gosh, I got to get better, and I got to find all the ways to get better to compete. And it came at a young age because my brothers were 4 and 6 years older. So for me to compete with those older boys, I had to figure it out in a hurry. And then when I play kids my age, man, that was a lot easier, at 12 years old when everyone else is 12 instead of, 16 and 18. So that really started me on my journey, and loved to compete, and ultimately thought I'd play in the major leagues forever, and became a coach when they'd go, hey, you should become a coach. And that was a job transition that was going on there because they told me I couldn't play anymore and my shoulder was busted up and needed a new career. And I fortunately had a degree in exercise science and health. So I started as a strength coach and went right back to work for the Detroit Tigers first, out of college, and or not shortly after college. And so it was a dream for me as a Michigan kid, going back to my hometown team and getting hired into that organization was pretty cool.
So what drove you? Did you always compare yourself with your brothers, always trying to outdo them? And
yeah, I mean, probably it's kind of a negative driver, right? The negative driver was people telling me I couldn't do it.
oh, okay.
That was, if you and Derek Jeter, I don't know if you're watching The Captain. That's going on right now on ESPN Plus. And Derek's from where I'm from. Like, I'm from Battle Creek and he's from Kalamazoo. I'm about 3 or 4 years older than Derek is. And being a smaller guy, I just remember everybody just telling me, yeah, you're not gonna be able to do that. You can't do that. And I was like, I'll show you. Like, I was just dead set on proving people wrong. And I got a great I had a great message from a guy when I was right after my freshman year in high school. I was at a camp. I was named the MVP of the camp with this showcase of all these players, and I really wanted to get that because I sat down with a person who had actually played in the big leagues. The only person I knew. I'd never met anybody who played in the major leagues. And he said, hey, Trent, what do you want to do? And I said, man, I want to do what you did. I want to play in the major leagues. And he was like, all right, man. Yeah, I think you got what it takes. And I was like, whoa. Like, I said, and I don't know what drove me, like what in like courage of a thunderbolt came onto my heart. And just like, I said, man, with all due respect, like everybody else is telling me no. I'm not fast enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not tall enough. And all I'm hearing is I'm not enough. And he just said, hey, let me ask you a question. He said, of all these people, your mom, your gym teacher, your 8th grade coach, any of these people play in the major leagues? And I was like, no. He's like, let me give you a piece of advice, that if you're going to take advice from somebody, you should actually find somebody who has done it and done what you want to do. And I'm like, all right, yes, sir. And I mean, I'm 52 years old now, and I have followed that advice since I was 15.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've actually heard that advice quite a few times. Just put yourself around the people that have succeeded and done what you want to do, and you'll get there. You can learn from anybody.
Well, and I think, listen, you got Jen Groover sitting right here. I mean, here's you got someone who's actually done it. And if you talk to somebody who's done it, she's happy to give advice. Like, she wrote a book about how to do this because no one really asks. And when they do, she's the first person to go, wow, someone helped me, so I'm going to help you. And people pay it forward. And I'm surprised how few kids and people coming up ask somebody who knows.
Thanks for the lead in there, Trent. Go ahead, Jen. Go ahead, Jen. I'd like to hear your story and see how you got to where you're at.
I appreciate it too. I'd have to say it started with my crazy layered childhood. It was a very interesting upbringing. My mom was a sassy, mouthy Brooklyn, New Yorker. And Vince Lombardi, you'll appreciate this since we're on the sports conversation. Vince Lombardi was like her uncle, a very close family friend to my grandfather. So he impressioned her a lot in her childhood. So she had this sassy determination like women of her generation did not have. And she was one of the first models for 17 magazine. She traveled a lot with that, met my dad in Philadelphia at a photo shoot. And he was DA at the time. And her hair had fallen out. They had just started hair straightening and she had this kinky curly hair. So they used the straightener on it and she lost all her hair. So my dad was representing her in that case. And they quickly fell in love. And my dad was a really poor kid from Philadelphia, a drill sergeant in the Marines. And unfortunately, my mom found herself quickly in love with an alcoholic, a highly functioning alcoholic, but there was a lot of abuse and trauma in the early stages of my childhood. So I got to see this life with my mom living like running campaigns for politicians, having TV shows, and doing really cool things. But also in my own home, there was a lot of trauma. And so I always had the curiosity of why do people do what they do and why do people behave the way they behave and why do cycles perpetuate? And I stumbled into a psychology class my first year at college and I fell in love. It was the first time I actually loved school other than the social aspect. But I just found the study of human behavior and cycles and patterns to be so fascinating. And it was in that first class that I had this very clear moment of why isn't everyone in this classroom? This should be mandatory for every human being to study, since it is the study of human beings. And life would be so much easier if this occurred. But I also made a commitment in that moment to learn everything that I could so that I would break the cycles that were not good in my childhood for my future family. And share, like Trent said, turn around and share everything that I learned. So I've always had this obsession of what makes people good to great. And at that same time period in college, I started, I'd always played sports, but I started learning about the fitness industry. It was a new industry at that point. And I went home and took a fitness class and loved it and took it back to my school and haphazardly started my first business without realizing it. I asked the school for steps, a boombox, and a space. And I used the business model that people did at college parties and charged $3 instead of a cup, $3 a class. and fell in love with the fitness industry. So right out of college, I continued my education in not just psychology and education, but physiology and nutrition, and became a national level fitness competitor. Worked with Reebok on the aerobics performance team. Back then, we were influencers without the word influencer being a thing. And I just found many mentors along the way and sat at their feet to just keep asking that question: what makes people good to great? And what allows people to accelerate, even people with broken homes and dysfunction accelerate, while some people who had the best setup don't accelerate. And so that's been my quest, continues to be. I am a student for life. And again, everything I learn, I turn around and try to teach others, because it just helps people accelerate their potential more quickly. And I
Cool. Lost you for a sec. Well, hopefully we get her back.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully we'll get Jen back.
Yeah.
I'm entrenched.
I know, that was a great story. And for one
Yeah.
thing, I until she gets back, I'm always intrigued by how people break out of cycles, right? Because
Yes.
family cycles are generational. I think I heard somewhere where they say sometimes it takes 7 generations to break, some cycles. Oh, there you are.
I'm
Yeah.
back.
You're
Yeah,
back.
good.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I think we're losing her a little bit. Oh well.
Yeah, I think the 7 generations, it's tough. Like I'm sure there's statistically around that. I've always read it only takes one. It only takes one person to stop the generation, the generational gap. But the courage to step out and do something different from what everyone's always known is so challenging, right? And there's so much pushback, especially from family, right? That's the last people
Well,
who are,
yeah.
and we think that's just the opposite, right? Those are the people you think like, oh my gosh, encourage you, yes, be better than us. Like no, like it's almost looked as oh, you want to be better, or you know, it's a negative thing often.
Yeah, in some ways you have to step away from family if they're just creating a negative influence. You have to surround yourself by people that, because a lot of times what I found, you can't believe in yourself 100% of the time, but if you surround yourself with people that believe in you, even when you don't, then, those are the right people to be around, right? I mean,
Yeah, it doesn't just have to be family, right? That's
it
all
could,
folks.
yeah. I look at everybody as family.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Likewise.
that's good.
So I think you look like you're steady now, Jen. I think you've stabilized.
Good.
So, can you share with us maybe some techniques that I'd like to hear about some of your programs. I watched your video before this podcast. It looks like you center a lot on daily habits to make sure that people are eating right and exercising right, so their energy levels are up. And do you focus on relationships a lot and how people deal with their interpersonal relationships, both at work or at home?
Absolutely. I
All
mean,
that.
the health of your relationships are in direct proportion to your success and happiness. Unfortunately, most people don't have skill sets developed around communication or just compassion, empathy, seeking to understand, and instead of being right. So, one of the things I really was forging for was this awareness around the critical importance of emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence isn't just psychology. A lot of people think it's psychology, but that's only one part of it. It's really this holistic understanding of how you create emotional awareness and emotional stability, and then also reading others in that place. So um, I was trying to figure out the easiest way for a long time how to take such complex information from so many different sciences that teach people how to holistically be their best version self. And I was always challenged with that because sometimes I have a keynote, it's 30 minutes, and I have to share this complex information in a simplified way to diverse audiences. And so I came up with this methodology called the MORE method. And ultimately, the MORE method teaches people how to get more of everything they desire in life by being more. So the mantra is be more, you achieve more. Be more, you have more. Be more, your life is just better. But it begins with you. And one goal and one task is just becoming more of who you are meant to be every day. And so MORE is an acronym that anyone at any stage of life can apply to their lives. And the first step is M, and M stands for mindfulness. So if you want more out of life, you first have to become more mindful of who you are, where you are, what triggers you, what programmed you, what beliefs you have, what limited beliefs you have specifically, what habits and behaviors you have. So really beginning this self-auditing process, making it a habitual self-auditing process. And so I break down for people how to actually become more mindful in this self-auditing process that I always teach. But then the O stands for optimization of the physiological state. So what many people don't understand is your physiological state is in direct proportion to your mental and emotional state. So if you're eating garbage, you're going to feel like garbage. If you're not sleeping properly and you're sleep deprived, you're not going to be as patient or mentally or emotionally clear. And so one thing that we are in control of is how we treat ourselves. A lot of the stuff in the world outside of us are not in our control, but we control that one aspect. So if we can prioritize treating our bodies in the most of the optimal way, our mental and emotional states are going to be optimized too. And then the R in the MORE method stands for learning to be more responsive than reactive. And in order to get more out of life, you have to respond to life instead of react to it. And most people are conditioned, I talked about those patterns, by the generation before and the generation before reacting to everything. So I teach people how to pause, how to self-reflect, how to think in their mind, get to a place in their mind of, is this really real? What meaning are you giving this? I mean, nothing has meaning until you give it meaning. So what meaning are you giving something? Are you giving your power away? Or are you taking your power back? So in this R part of the process, I really teach people how to be more emotionally intelligent by giving them these mantras. Like I just said, nothing has meaning until you give it meaning, or hurt people, happy people don't. So they're the thought processes that can shift our state quickly to put us back in control. And then the E in that is learning how to excel in all aspects of life. I believe in holistic success because holistic success is what brings fulfillment. And ultimately, that's what people want. They want to be fulfilled. Fulfillment equals happiness. And so often people neglect certain aspects of their lives, but there's 4 core quadrants. Your health and well-being, without it, we know we don't have really anything. The health of your relationships, your personal achievement, and your professional achievement. And if we could nurture all 4 of those quadrants every day of our lives, we have more holistic success. So I always say it's like a car. If you keep driving the car, one tire's flat, eventually everything's going to just come to a halt. And then you're going to have to change that flat tire. But if you just keep putting air in the tires every day, then the car is going to run more smoothly. And that's really an analogy of our lives. So people often think if I just work really hard, I'm going to be successful, therefore I'll be happy. And then they wake up in their 40s and 50s and they're like, wait, who is this person I've been sleeping next to? And who are these kids I'm
Where
sending
did
off
my
to
life
college?
go? Yeah.
Yeah. And then that's what the midlife crisis is really about, was the neglecting all these other aspects of life. So that's the foundation of which I always try to teach how to begin to excel and maximize your potential. That acronym sets a foundation that even anytime you get stuck, you can get unstuck by going through that. Am I being mindful? Am I treating my body well? Am I responding to life or reacting to it? And am I focused on all the right priorities in life?
That's inspirational. I've been lucky enough to have the right coaches, when I finally left work last year, that they were kind of teaching, a lot of the same things you're teaching. For one thing, you have to have balance in your personal life and your business life. If you run too hard in either direction, one's going to suffer, and you're just not going to be successful. My biggest challenge is not loving, I mean, I love coffee, but if I drink coffee, I crash every time, so I just getting away from coffee is one of my, everyone's got their thing that they love, but they really can't get at. But yeah, I completely understand. That sounds great, Jen. Oh, you froze again. So I'm curious, Trent, what kind of techniques did you teach players when you were coaching? Was there anything along that lines? Did you teach a lot as far as making sure that their home lives were right, their personal lives were right, to make sure that they performed correctly on the field?
Yeah, I mean, for us, like it was a holistic viewpoint of an athlete, right? That was huge. I mean, there were so many facets of a successful athlete, and that emotional intelligence is a huge one. And someone dealing with their, and I think it can be learned. I think it can be trained. I mean, I think the MORE method's a great concept. We certainly use something in leadershipity that's in a style of developing people's emotional intelligence, understanding which areas they're struggling with and why it's happening. And I think, there's certainly that awareness for athletes. The Cleveland Indians were probably one of the best organizations I'd ever seen at. I learned really early because I went to the Tribe in 1995, of course, now called the Guardians, right? And Cleveland, we, over the next 3 years, we were, I think, the organization of the year every year. And one of those was based on a system that each athlete had to meet with coaches, sports psychologists, nutrition. I mean, like, it was very holistic and like, hey, how do I get better? Like, how am I at coachability? How am I at dependability? How am I at managing my responsibility, getting in on time, taking care of myself, being a decent teammate? How is my competitiveness? Then all these other factors of, hey, am I prepared physically? Am I eating the right foods? Am I flexible? Am I running into injury issues, even small issues? So all these things looked, and I have 4 boys who are all athletes, and I often tell them about this system because not once did I talk about how fast do you run? How hard do you throw? How well do you hit? Like, everyone could do that at that level really well. I mean, like, they were superstars at every level. So everyone coming in to these 260 athletes at a pro team can run, hit, throw. That's like the bare minimum. Now, to get to that next level, it's going to be all these little things that holistically combine into this athlete growing to the next level. And I think one of the best examples of an athlete like that is Tom Brady. And when Jen mentioned Vince Lombardi, I think he was the original grit guy, right? And there's a grit formula out there that kind of comes in of like, hey, here's your talent times your effort equals your skill. So here you got a talent. What's Tom Brady's level on the NFL football level was, his talent was like a 6, but his effort was a 10. So that was 60. And then 60, we bring that skill number down and effort counts twice. So we go 60 times 10, 600. So on a scale from 0 to 1,000, he was a 600 coming out of college, which is a really high number. And then, of course, because every rep counts with him, his skill, his talent just grew over time. And then all of a sudden, after a couple of years, his talent is a 7. And then a couple more years, his talent's an 8. Now he's an 800. And then, of course, today he's 9 plus, right? So he's a 900 plus scorer, and he's one of the greatest of all times. And if we reverse that, we take someone who's a 10 talent, but a 6 effort, you still got the 60, but then the 60 times 6 is only 360. So that's a very lower number on the 360. And I tell people, if you don't have a person in your organization who's not a 200, like, please don't waste your time with them. Like, you are going to beat your head against a wall in someone who probably shouldn't be in a seat that you're asking them to be in. Either they don't want to be, they don't want to give effort, they don't have the talent for it, whatever it is, whatever that formula comes out. If you are sub 200, do not have those people in your organizations. They will destroy your organizations from the inside out.
Probably more because they just don't have the effort, or they don't have the drive.
Oftentimes the effort's low, right? Like, when we look at that, and people often ask me in my world, hey, Coach Yank, what's the best player you ever coached in the major leagues? And I'm like, oh, you don't know him. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, you coached Jim Thome and Alan Trammell and Kirk Gibson and all these big names. And like, yeah, I did. But like, the best talented player I saw was like a 10 talent with a 2 effort. Like, he was so talented, he didn't have to work very hard, and he couldn't take care of himself, and he wasn't a very good teammate, and he had a poor attitude and all these things, but the talent was a 10. Like, one of the best athletes you've ever seen in your life. But 10 times 2 is 20, and 20 times 2 is 40. So on a scale from 0 to 100, the best player I've ever seen couldn't score a 100.
It's like Allen Iverson.
This is a factor.
It's like an Allen Iverson.
Well, yeah, Allen Iverson was a total like 10 talent, right? I mean, incredible. Now, not no effort, right? But I mean, certainly skated, for years on a 5 effort, and a 10 times 5 is 50 times, 50 times 5 is 250, right? Like, it's like, man, you're waiting for this guy to keep out, and he has a few years that are just incredible. but when it's over,
Yeah.
like it's over. It's over
Yeah.
fast, right?
I can witness to that. I've grown up with people I've saw had amazing talent, and they just, it was directed in the wrong direction. And scouts would come see and say, well, we see a lot of guys like this, but we can already tell that, they're just probably not going to make it because of a couple of reasons here. It's just personal development is everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors into it for sure. I mean, there's just a lot of factors into that, and we really have to look deep. But I think most scouts miss that because they see so much talent and be like, oh, they're gonna figure it out. They're gonna figure it out. And as coaches, we want to see the potential in everybody, right? And we're like, oh my goodness, look at this. When we get them in and they start following the program, and no one ever asks, like, well, what if they don't follow the program?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Vince Lombardi's like, you're not gonna follow the program, then you were out. Like I don't, and this kind of comes back to like if you've ever seen Miracle the movie, and kind of looking back at that 80 Olympic team, which is the Miracle team, right? Which is, here's a team. He's like, hey, I don't need the best players, I need the right players.
Right.
And that's a very different discussion, right? And as we work as leadership teams, we work with teams, it's all about that, right? We have an acronym called CARD, right? And when I'm looking at my team, I always feel like, hey, if we're in a card game and I have all the aces, guess what? I'm going to beat Brian and Jen. Like, I got all the aces, I win, right? And so I want them. And a card for me is coachability, adaptability, responsibility. And if now I got someone on my team who can do that, and Jen does that for me every time. So all of a sudden we start going, hey, Jen, can you handle this? Hey, Jen, can you do that? And she proves herself again and again and again, giving me the D, dependability. Because as a coach, I start going, oh, Jen, I'll take 10 more just like her. Like, that's who I want. I just want a mom. Well, she's not the fastest. She's not the most fit. She's not the best eater of our team. She's not, I don't care. Like, she doesn't need to be the best. She gets it done every time. It doesn't have to be the best in the world. I need more people who are willing to take on those things and keep adapting, keep being a lifelong learner, which is totally coachability. And that's what we're looking for.
Yeah. And you talked about Tom Brady when he got from that 7 to that 8 to that now where he is. So much of that was also his commitment to his own emotional growth and his ability in that growth to stay calm when things are getting heated, when things are, where everyone else is, you see, losing their momentum, losing their focus, and their adrenaline is taking over. And it's a big part of what I talk about, even in business, because when you can't keep your emotional status, your emotional equanimity, you can't think straight, you can't function at your peak level. And I have a really interesting story you'll both love, especially since Trent doing what you do. There's an organization that I'm on the board for called Thuzio that was started by Tiki Barber. And I've been with the organization since it started. And we would have these events with athletes all the time. And we'd have interviews, and it was just really cool. It was like, you're like sitting, like eavesdropping on a cool fireplace conversation.
Yes.
And one of them was Roy Halladay. And Roy apparently was incredibly shy socially, which was so crazy to me because he's pitching in front of 70,000 people, like all these eyeballs on him, right? But he told this story about how when he started and he's in the Blue Jays and he's climbing ranks, and all of a sudden he gets to the majors, people got in his ear, like questioning if you're enough and how good do you think you really are, and do you really belong being here? And it started shattering his belief system, which was shattering then his emotional control. So all of a sudden, as quickly as he got to the majors, he got sent back down to the minors because he couldn't control his mind. So he had hired a coach like us to help him get his mindset back into where it was, and to learn how to control his mind and emotions. So his physiological training never changed. The mechanics never changed. What changed was in his head and the emotional equanimity, or the lack thereof, because of what was happening in his head. And he said once he got that coach and went back to getting to control his mind and control his beliefs, that's when he became the legend that he became so quickly. But he knew his mechanics didn't change. He knew he was still training physiologically the same way. And his point, and what he shared with every athlete after that, was the number one thing you need to master is your mindset. And everything else is just mechanics.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I mean, I think that I just had an interview. I think we just ran it on Friday again with Bobby Magianis, who's a hitting coach for the Braves, and he has a master's degree in performance psychology, right? Like it is a massive factor of what's going on in your mind, and it's back to Henry Ford. Like, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And so what you're telling yourself in between your ears during all these things that are happening, and going back to Brady and the Patriots back in the day, there was a program in the NFL at the combine called the TAP report. And they used to do, it's called the Troutwine Athletic Profile. And he had derived it from a lot of work with SEALs and different organizations of top performers. And he had this warrior quotient, like based on competitiveness, coachability, emotional intelligence, like all these things. And so the warrior quotient was like really who we want in our foxhole. So we're out there in the middle of battle, and Jen, Brian, Trent are freaking out, and Tom's like, all right, this is what we're gonna do. Jen, you're gonna flank left, and we're like, all right, Tom, let's do that. Like, because we're like, man, like, I don't know what's about to go on. It's a life or death deal, but he's still as cool as the other side of the pillow, has it emotionally managed. And so that was the one thing that was a big separator from him, was that he could see things from an emotional standpoint that he tested out way better than other people. So they're like, well, he doesn't have a great 40 and he doesn't have a vertical jump. Like, he's still notoriously the worst ever tested, right, in the NFL combine, yet he's the GOAT. So let's talk about how important that psychological is, because apparently a vertical jump and a 40 doesn't turn out to be that important for a quarterback, right?
Right. Yeah, this is an awesome conversation. This is exactly where I would expect it to go, especially for human growth and development. Your mindset is everything. And it's never more obvious. I love watching golf. It's never more obvious than in golf, because, I mean, if you watch those guys, every single one of those guys can hit just the best shot. But you can see if they're breaking down mentally, they're not making their shots. It's all about their mindset. Amazing.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think there's also another factor there, Brian, which is confidence, right? And confidence comes from prep and reps. And so getting a coach who's going to walk you through about what's about to happen, both physically, mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually too, like getting that combine of all that. That was where Wooden was really good. Like, he was like, hey, we're going to be physically and mentally, but we're also going to be conditioned on our heart, like as our integrity is going to be conditioned too. And I think that's something we've lacked over years, where we've lost some of that foundation in our youth. We're not putting the stress on it that was so important when I think I was a kid, and maybe you guys too. But I think that we've lost a little bit of that. But and when I think about that confidence, like, I have a 15-year-old daughter, so my fourth child now is coming through driving, and drivers aren't confident when they're 15 years old, right? They're freaking out. They haven't done the reps. They're like, oh my gosh, someone's going to cross the middle line and hit me. And I'm like, well, there's this self-preservation thing. They don't want to die either. Like, so like, and so you're unconfident, but here I am now. And any of us at 32 years old, and your friend or your significant says, hey, can you run to the store and grab me something? Like, we get in the car, start it, drive off, make a phone call, and we monitor speed, to all the other traffic, lights, signs. I mean, we're literally monitoring 120 things at one time. And we're doing it almost subconsciously, because our confidence is so high from how many reps we've had and the preps. And so you're prepared and you've done it. And so where this lack of confidence comes in the body from these young golfers, and you see these athletes falling, is that they don't have the right reps all the time. And now it's coming on them. And you see confidence leave the body, and it's like, and when it happens, it's absolutely like, it's, what's the word? It's almost tragic.
Yeah, you can see it deflate.
It's about to go really bad.
You can see their body deflate. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't want to keep you guys all day. I want to hear one good story. I want to hear one good success story from each of you. I'll start with you, Jen, since you're I don't want to lose you. I want to make sure you're still active and your video feed's still coming.
So, what success story from which aspect?
Any success story you have, either your business or your life. I just love hearing success stories. Any kind of success story you got.
Yeah, okay, cool. So I'll share one of my favorites because it was a tipping point in my life, inspired by my twin daughters when they were newborns. I was in a grocery store and I was in an express lane, and they were in their little car seats at that time, and I went to pay the cashier and I put their car seats down on the floor so that I could go through my purse and rifle to find my credit card. And as that was happening, both girls started screaming like that high-pitched baby scream at the same exact time. And I'm shaking through my handbag and I can't find my credit card. So I dump it out and I'm panicking and I'm seeing everybody behind me rolling their eyes. And I walked out of the grocery store that day thinking, seriously, as far as innovation has come in our society, women accept a bucket for a handbag. It's literally a bucket. Like, you could put paper and a mop and water and it's a bucket. So my mom had this mantra that I hated growing up, but I love it now. You're not allowed to complain about something unless you back up your complaint with a solution. So it taught my brain, it actually hardwired my brain to go from problem solution, because sometimes I did want to complain, but I had to figure out what my solution was going to be before I could give my complaint. So I'm walking out of the grocery store thinking this, but then I went to the place of like, well, what am I going to do? I can't even draw a stick figure well. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a designer, and kind of shelved the idea. And during that time period, I was doing a lot of focus on limited beliefs in my subconscious mind, which we could talk about for a whole nother hour, but really doing a lot of work on catching myself on what limited beliefs were still programmed that I needed to eliminate. And one of the ones I discovered in this time period was after the grocery store, before this miracle moment, was I had this massive fear of failure. Because my dad, I mentioned, was a drill sergeant in the Marines, always said failure is not an option, which I totally understand in a battlefield. However, if you say that to a child with good self-preservation skills, the child's just going to do naturally what they're good at and never ever take chances to do what they might fail at. Right. So I got really good at doing what I was good at and avoiding things that I could fail at, for fear that if I failed, I was a failure. So I identified, because at that time period, I was bringing products to QVC for other brands and on air with these products, making millions of dollars. And I had ideas like that. And I would say to myself, why am I not doing that? Why are they doing it and I'm not doing it? And that's where I discovered my fear of failure. So I created this formula in understanding psychology and neuroscience, that when you have a limited belief, in order to reprogram, create new neurotransmitters in your brain, or new neural pathways, in your brain, you have to create a new belief. And in that belief, you flip the old belief. So at that point, the belief was, I have more fear of regret than I have a failure. Failure's only a part of the process on the journey to success. And so I created a new belief with a new value proposition. The value proposition being, you have to fail to succeed. So I repeated that mantra all day, every day, day after day. And it changed my brain. That process literally changes your brain, changes your perception. When you change your beliefs, your perception and how you view the world changes. So at that time period, as all this was happening, the answer to my handbag problem lied in a place that I'd been in my whole childhood. My job as a child was to unload the dishwasher. I'd been unloading the dishwasher since I was probably 5 years old. And one day during that time period, after changing my beliefs and changing that fear of failure, I was unloading the dishwasher like usual, and I saw the solution to my handbag problem in the dishwasher tray. I saw the utensils standing up straight. I could look into them, have a bird's eye view, and I thought to myself, wait, that is the solution to my handbag problem. I took the dishwasher tray out of the dishwasher, stuck it into my handbag, and that became my first prototype.
That's awesome.
And
Woo!
there it was. It was there all along. But I tell that story, especially to my students. I always say, I'd been in that dishwasher, using that dishwasher tray. But what changed was my brain, my perception. I literally had done that exercise my whole life. And so when we can change our brain, we elevate our perspective. Just like if you're elevating in a hot air balloon, getting rid of sandbags. Sandbags are symbolic of your limited beliefs and your bad behaviors. But I've been on the journey to take that handbag company to market, not knowing exactly how to do it or what all the steps were going to be. But I did one other exercise that was really important. And as I set a really big, audacious goal to make that company $1 million in the first year of business, bootstrapping. And just shy of the first year, 2 weeks shy of the first year, we hit $1 million in sales. And that was in 2006. So for a woman-owned company, especially before social media was what it is today, it was kind of significant. Right. So I thought to myself, well, if that formula worked, I might as well just 10x it, right? I might as well make 10 million my second year. And 1 week shy of the second year, we hit 10 million in sales. So I love that story because it really emphasizes everything I believe, that your beliefs are everything. And in order to continue to elevate who you are, you have to continue to audit and change your beliefs and keep setting big goals that are scary to stretch your comfort zone, to stretch your potential. And when you do that and you believe that you're worthy and capable of achieving what those goals are, the universe begins to conspire along with your effort and hard work and consistency to make things happen, big things happen.
Awesome. That's a great story, especially since you found a piece of the dishwasher that actually fit in your handbag.
Yeah,
I know. That's right. Yeah, just that old little pocket.
It wasn't a clutch.
No, it definitely wasn't a clutch because it was like my diaper bag handbag at the time.
Yes, yeah.
Perfect bag.
Which is just funny because I think my wife actually had one delivered to our house like today that looks exactly like that. And I might use it in the dishwasher later actually to put the silverware in. I'm not sure. I don't know how she'll feel about that.
Take it for a test run. It's amazing. Everything stays in its compartment.
But I love the $1 million mark. I'm an EO member, and it's funny because we talk about $1 million in revenue. Only 3.4% of all companies in North America make $1 million or more. So I mean, you're talking about $1 million. Like in your first year, it's rare air, let alone to get there, but let alone in a year's time. It's crazy. I mean, that is just like awesome.
Thank you. It was me also setting this perception. I knew also an interesting thing about beliefs. I knew that at that moment in time, less than 1% of the United States was made up of female millionaires. Now, this isn't job cap, it's salary. This is self-made. And I thought to myself, why is it that women are going to college equally to men, yet such a disparity in success and wealth, achievement and growth? So I really set that goal, not just for myself, but look, if I can do it, I didn't have privilege. I, came from some dysfunction and trauma. No one gave me money to start my company. I'm like literally the girl next door. So if I could do it, you can do it too. And that I knew that until women were setting these goals and achieving them, where it was visible for other women to see, the belief that women had was, if I'm too successful, women aren't going to like me. If I'm too successful, people want too much from me. If I'm too successful, I must be a bad mother. And so there are all these limited beliefs that women collectively had around money and success, which was what was holding them back.
Oh, yeah.
I think still have sometimes, right? I mean, I think that still permeates. I mean, there's all this You know, and I think it's built in our own minds. I don't really know if everybody else thinks that, but we think like, oh, this is what they're thinking, right? Like, wait a minute, why are we even concerned with what other people are thinking in our mindset, right? But we
Right.
do.
Yeah.
It's so natural for us to do, and I love the story. I think it's so awesome. It just really, one of the things that it really sets aside is that I interviewed a lot of people on my Winners Find a Way show, right? And all of them are about overcoming. They're all multimillionaires, one percenters, and we talk about that. Every one of them has a story to tell. And what they learned was most people came from something tough as a kid. And
Yeah.
when they learned to overcome that, they were like, whoa, I could overcome other stuff. They actually built some prep and reps around discomfort and around things that aren't easy and doing hard things. And then when something else came up that was hard, they're like, oh yeah, I've done that before. I can do that again. I've got some confidence. And I actually know how to do that. Like I know how to go back and work and study and find people who will help me. And there's these skill sets that I'll get in. I think, like you said, Jen, at the beginning, which is like, hey, I didn't come from privilege. I didn't come from the easy road. And I think as a parent, sometimes that easy road doesn't serve your children. Like, oh, here it is. I just want to make things good for you because I didn't have it that way. Like, well, part of that's what made you, right? And it's
Yeah.
our experiences. And so I think those stories permeate throughout most of the doers in the world.
Yeah. And you know what's funny, Trent? My girls just went to college. One's at Arizona State right now, and the other's at Charleston.
Nice.
But
Sun
but
Devils,
growing,
baby.
yeah,
Mhm.
two great places to visit. But
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
what
Opposite
they were
ways.
growing, but yeah, I know. I know it's that heart was heartbreaking. But all through their growing up, I would literally try to find ways to say no, to create disappointment. So they learned how to deal with disappointment.
Yeah.
And the second they could get a job and they wanted a car, they had to pay for it. And they would say I was hard on them in that sense because none of their friends' parents were doing these things. And I said to them, I know it feels like I'm being unfair right now, but you'll thank me later in life because
Mm,
it's building the skills that you're going to need to develop to be a self-sufficient, independent, adaptable adult.
yeah. Yeah. My first entrepreneur group that I sat down with as a forum, there were, I think, 9 of us, and I think 6 of us had a paper route, and every one of us worked before we were 12 years old.
Yeah.
I mean, that was
Yeah.
just, you went to work, you found out a way to make money, and you had your own money. You're like, oh my gosh, I'd like to ask Jen to go to the movies. And like, my dad's like, I don't have any money. Like, I'm like, if she's gonna actually go, I'm gonna have $20, you know, like, so like,
Right.
you have to go make money and be like, and then you're like, hey man, I got money. And like, guess what? The other kids like Jen too, and they don't have any money, and I do. And guess what? She wants to hang out with the guy who's got money and can go do stuff, right? So
Right.
it was like, man, you had to earn it, and I think that's lost a little bit too, like earned, never given. And we say that a lot about, the rings, like, right? You're a world champion, like it's earned, it's never given. No one says, oh, hey, you can be the top seller on QVC, just any product will do. Really? Like
Yeah.
baloney. You better
Yeah.
bring something that separates you from everybody else and keep working at it and working at it. And someone goes, oh, we had the highest first day of sales ever. Great. Does that mean you have sustainability and can keep selling? I
No.
don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I doubt it. My bet is that there's a couple one-hit wonders that go in there and go, oh, that's hot product, and then whatever, I don't need anymore. Fidget spinners, right? Who's got one of those
Right.
anymore? So it's just it's an interesting dynamic that people don't understand all the time, and it's there is a very clear formula, and I would say that's probably my success story, Brian, is that I watch like a guy like David Eckstein who was willing to do the things, who's an absolute card. He's the guy who's like, oh, David, I'll take 10 more just like him, and all the scouts are going, no way. He's 5'8" and 152 pounds. Like,
Mhm.
he can't play with athletes that look like this on this level. Yet he won a couple of World Series and probably made 40-50 million in career earnings. Like, I don't know, but if that seems good to you, but like he did it through constantly developing himself from a physical standpoint, from an emotional and mental standpoint, and from a spiritual integrity standpoint. And he built all three. And the reality is he was very good at doing all those together. It was never like, oh, look it, I'm massively strong spiritually and integrity standpoint, but I have no mental and emotional conditioning, right? Or I'm physically great, but I don't have that. Like the gap becomes too wide. You have to develop them together and in tandem and bring them all up. And when there's one that just drops out, the end is near.
Yeah.
And
For
he can
sure.
follow the formula, right? There's the formula, and he could follow it. He went along, and I've seen a ton of people have very good success. And I would say the one difference of all the top 1%ers I know is that they have the self-discipline to actually serve those three categories and continue to dive into it. Whereas we all know it gets tough, right? Like it gets hard in your fitness, right? Like you're like, yeah, I could go do the workout, or I could do bonbons and watch, do room service and watch a movie, right? And even when we know better, right? I mean, Jen and I got all this physiology background. Like I still like to sit and watch a movie. Like, oh, wait a minute, Ted Lasso marathon. Come on, like I'm gonna sit and watch this. Like, and I should be going out doing my work, doing my runs, and so it's like, hey, you've got to have that self-discipline, and the best in the world have it.
Oh yeah, you have to stress yourself in every category. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, it's been a blessing having you both here. I've learned a lot. I'm sure, I hope everybody listening to this will learn a lot. The formula for success is always the same, right? You have to stress yourself. Don't be afraid to fail, because I mean, what's the other option, right? You're not going to ever do anything. So
Yeah. And at the end of your life, sitting back thinking woulda, shoulda, coulda, that regret feels a lot worse than the effort of trying. Even if you didn't succeed, you still grew in the process.
Yeah, I like to say the pain of discipline is acute, right? It's short term. The pain of regret is chronic. It stays with you a long, long time. And it plays out. You see it in people that you know, and we all have regrets, right? I think I have them as a 52-year-old, and man, I still feel that. And even though it could be something that happened 37 years ago, still feel that pain. And yet we all talked about as athletes, right? Oh my gosh, that class was so hard. Jen made us do hill running till we puked, but we won the championship and all became better as a team. And no one ever looks back on the like 10-year anniversary and goes, oh my gosh, remember how hard it was? I was so glad I quit. They're not at the anniversary. They're not at the so glad I quit when it got hard. They're like, oh my gosh, it was a short term. 2 days later, I felt fine. The soreness was out, and we kept winning. I don't know, like, but that pain of regret is significant to folks. If they miss that, it's a big miss.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks so much for hanging with me today. So like I said before, it's been a blessing having you both here, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, thanks.